Welcome to Elmhurst, our community. I'm Ken Bartels, your host, and we're coming to you from the business zone at the Community Bank of Elmhurst. Today, my guests are from the Elmhurst Yorkfield Food Pantry. Kevin Kost, board member, and Nancy Peterson, board member. Welcome to EOC, and I want to start with some history on the food pantry for viewers that simply may not know it. How long has the pantry actually been in existence?
Well, Ken, the pantry started in 1983 in a walk-in closet in the basement of Yorkfield Presbyterian Church. A few members of the church realized that there were families in need and delivered to a very few number of families every week. They were hand-packed bags of staples like peanut butter, jelly, bread, macaroni and cheese, maybe some canned vegetables. In the early 90s, the pantry moved across the parking lot to a little cottage into a 600 square foot cellar, not even really a basement, that didn't have adequate heat in the summer, and we tended to blow fuses for air conditioning, or didn't have adequate heat in the winter, and we tended to blow fuses for air conditioning in the summer. It was not handicapped accessible. We continued to supply prepackaged bags of food to our clients, and then in the late 1990s, converted to a client choice food pantry, which meant that patrons were able to take a shopping cart, select the items they wanted, and shop with a little more dignity. But we still face problems like no washroom, no waiting area except for a couple of metal folding chairs by the sump pump, the desk sort of shoved under a staircase.
So it's a functional space, but not a perfect space.
Not a perfect space.
So it starts in the Presbyterian Church because parishioners saw a need.
It was a mission.
So that need then evolves into a service area today, and we're going to talk about differences between then and now, but the service area today is approximately what? What communities or what area?
Sure. So we service Elmhurst, of course, and then 7 of the surrounding communities, including Addison, Berkeley, Bensonville, Hillside, Villa Park, Lombard, and Oak Brook. That's right. Yeah, so we serve the surrounding 7 communities as well as Elmhurst.
Okay, so that service area evolves over time, starts right bedrock local need and eventually evolves. Is there any way either one of you could describe for me what a average client might look like? Because, and this is a hybrid question, so sure. Both of you would be aware that one of the questions about food pantries that comes up regularly is, we're sitting in DuPage County, Elmhurst is, and not all the communities you mentioned are, but they're all close by. So how is it that there's a need for a food pantry, and not just one food pantry, there are obviously others.
Sure.
So what's a typical, how is it that they need this assistance?
Sure. And I can start to elaborate on that a little bit more. You'd be surprised at, sometimes people think of it as they are homeless or don't have anything, and that's so not the norm, right? A lot of the times it's people that have fallen on difficult times, right? It's sometimes the single mother that just can't make ends meet. A lot of the times we have seniors that effectively are only able to live in, certain housing that is government subsidized in a way for them to be able to get some food is because of the food pantry, right? And a lot of it is really unfortunate circumstances and people that if they have bills that they have to pay, right? And so if food is one that they have to pay for, then that means that there's something else that they might not be able to do. They might not be able to get their kids some clothes for school or things along those lines. So a lot of it is kind of your neighbor that you wouldn't expect. It's people that just need a little bit of help when it's tough to make ends meet.
We've also seen a lot of people lose benefits through their employment or working 2 part-time jobs without benefits, enough to pay rent, but not necessarily pay for medication and pay for food at the same time.
So is there Is there any kind of a litmus test, though, for help? Or if someone shows up and expresses the desire for help or cites a need of your assistance, that it isn't like you challenge them, it's come on in or make an appointment or whatever it is, the procedure?
All the individual needs to do is prove residency in one of the 8 communities we serve.
Okay.
And a valid photo ID.
Okay. And your point, Kevin, is you also will hear the occasional story of volunteering at the food pantry and pulling in the parking lot and having someone who's getting food driving a better car than you're driving. And the circumstance you pointed out is a critical differentiation, because that car could have been, likely is already paid for, or it's one of the things that needs to be paid for a lot of reasons, getting to work or this kind of stuff, and it's still a need for food. So I mean, it can be an interesting consequence of who you serve and the communities you serve that something like that can happen.
I couldn't agree more. And again, that if we are able to provide food, then maybe they can pay for gas to be able to get to work. They don't need to have to try to, do different things along those lines. So you never know somebody's circumstance, and the people that you wouldn't necessarily expect sometimes are the ones that have just come into need.
So how often can someone come to the pantry for assistance?
Once a month. And we realize that it's difficult to feed a family if you go to the grocery store once a month. So we certainly encourage them to use other resources as well. And many of our families do not shop every month. They have a rough time. They need a few months to get back on their feet. Some are regular monthly clients. It depends on their circumstance.
And we often see a little bit more of a spike towards the start of school as well as the holidays because of those things. Sometimes our clients are able to keep standard monthly bills afloat, but then when something arises, like again, some book fees or things, again, clothes. I know when I was growing up, I shot up every single year of my size. My parents had to buy me new clothes every single year. So when that's happening, it's just tough to be able to get the food that you need as well.
So once a month, and I totally agree. I wouldn't want to try and handle the household on a monthly visit to the grocery store. But that leads me to my question about coordination of assistance. What kind of coordination, or what's the differentiation between the Elmhurst Yorkfield Food Pantry and the Elmhurst Walk-In Assistance Network, United Community Concerns, some of the, if you will, maybe larger and better known food pantry like the Northern Illinois Food Bank, just to name one? Is there coordination? Can you say you can only come to us once a month, but remember you can go over there and you can go over there? And how does that work?
Absolutely. The Northern Illinois Food Bank is not a pantry. It's the wholesaler for the food pantries in Northern Illinois, and we are an agent member of that food pantry where we buy most of our non-perishable goods at a deep discount. In terms of the Elmhurst Walk-In Assistance Network, they don't provide food, but we do provide referrals to them. They will help pay utility bills, buy gas, bus tokens, whatever a person may need in a minute. United Community Concerns serves exclusively Elmhurst school children. We certainly encourage anybody who uses our service to use any other pantry or service in the area. We provide them with a list of other pantries. We are the largest in eastern DuPage County. Many of the smaller ones still provide the bags of food, but if you get a bag or two of food, that's certainly going to help you in the interim.
certainly.
Yeah, what we always talk about is that we're all trying to do the same thing here, right? We're all trying to help. You know, it's just not even close to any sort of competition, anything along those lines. So if there's any way that anybody needs help and we can provide them the one time a month that they can come here, and if they seem like they need some more help, or reach out to some of our volunteers or some of the people that work with the food pantry, we'll absolutely encourage them to take a look at some of the other organizations that could help.
So I want to circle back to, if you will, the transformation of a 1983 food pantry operating out of a insufficient basement space in an older home on the south end of Elmhurst, and the transition into the space that you have today. Number one, what was the, if you will, the final thing that made the board of directors of the pantry decide that you needed a new facility, and if that meant, and it did, having a fundraising campaign to raise the money? How was that decision made? How was the campaign put together? How did it end? And then we'll talk about what the food pantry is today. So let's start with, okay, what was it that finally, you know, one last blown fuse, one last leaky pipe, one last spoiled something?
I think it came down to a spike in need from clients. By 2011, we were serving 200 clients a month, or 200 family clients a month. A year later, 300. We were storing food in a one-car garage adjacent to the pantry. We were using volunteers' garages to store food. We had to rent a pod to store food, to have sufficient food close by and available to clients. So in about 2012, we were granted charitable status through the state of Illinois and began the 501c3 process to separate the church to become a separate charitable operation, knowing that we needed to do that in order to have a capital campaign. In February of 2014, that status was granted, and the next day we started our capital campaign. We were fortunate that a local architect paired up with us pro bono, took us to pantries to visit, so the new building is purpose-built.
Right.
I think, too, another major factor was we were not able to serve clients safely with enough dignity and respect, and we wanted to have a facility we could do that. The fundraising campaign started in February 2014. A condition of the church, because they were letting us build the new building on their property, was that it had to be 100% financed without debt prior to breaking ground. In August of 2015, we broke ground. So in just over 15 months, we had raised $875,000.
Which, by the way, speaks to several things. It speaks to the underlying mission and delivery, and it speaks to the history of your specific food pantry. It speaks to the generosity of not just Elmhurst, but certainly the Elmhurst area. And you know, the rhetorical question, if you didn't exist today, would somebody feel compelled to create you? And it answers that question as well. The answer would be, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that this needs to be here. So what did $800,000 get you?
It got us a 2,500 square foot purpose-built facility, all on one level, no stairs, ADA compliant. It looks a little bit like a mini Aldi. But the maneuverability of shopping carts is much easier. We have a waiting area now. In the old facility, people lined up on York Road, whether it was sleeting or 110 degrees in the shade. We have a comfortable waiting room where they can wait, again, with dignity. We have a storage bay where we can open a garage door and backload in pallets from our Northern Illinois food bank deliveries instead of dumping them on the ground, breaking them up, hauling them up and down stairs. And we have a wonderful storage facility as part of the building.
Do your clients, do they make appointments?
No.
So depending on what the hours are, and we can cover that too, but they can just arrive and
Absolutely.
sort of as they're able to get in.
Correct, yeah, we have more shopping nights, specific nights in which clients can come to be able to do their shopping for the month. So it is not kind of at any time, but we have very, very a good amount of hours in the evenings that we can help accommodate.
And we also have Saturday morning. So we're open Monday evening, Thursday afternoon, Thursday evening, and Saturday morning for clients.
And primarily volunteer-based in terms of assistance to clients and obviously board service and all of those things.
Yeah, I am consistently blown away with the amount of volunteers and the amount of people that are there all the time. The amount of volunteers that put, gosh, I mean, full-time levels of hours there. If I walk in there, I know I'm seeing Tom and Chuck and, Nancy. I see regulars there at almost any single time that I show up to the pantry. There's a lot of very dedicated volunteers.
We have over 700 volunteers
Okay.
who accumulated 16,000 hours of volunteer service last year.
And number of clients served approximately?
There's about 600 households, is it?
600 households. The exact number is
Let's see if I have that
a
somewhere.
couple of thousand.
Okay, sure.
And that includes about 800 seniors and unfortunately way too many children.
Okay. Well, all of this good work requires funding and support and assistance. And I know we've got a big fundraiser coming up on November 6th. And when we come back from a quick break, we're going to talk about that fundraiser.
I would love to.
So this is Elmhurst, our community. We're here at the Community Bank of Elmhurst talking to Kevin and Nancy about the Elmhurst Yorkfield Food Pantry. And we'll be right back. The Community Bank of Elmhurst Business Zone has modern co-working space and a conference room free for our business customers. Visit the zone today at communityelmhurst.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. Welcome back to Elmhurst, our community. We're talking about the Elmhurst Yorkfield Food Pantry, and we've been talking about its history. Now we're going to talk about its future. The food pantry, of course, as a not-for-profit, as you had said earlier, requires support, requires assistance. So I guess my first question would be, what's the normal budget?
Sure.
The annual budget of the Elmhurst Food Pantry today?
Sure, thanks for the question. So the budget is about $150,000 a year. And that includes, of course, food costs, as Nancy was alluding to earlier with the Northern Illinois Food Bank. They do wonderful work with us being able to get very large quantities of non-perishable foods that we can get in for a significantly discounted price. Some of the big expenses that we really run into is that we are one of the few food pantries that actually offers dairy and eggs to our clients every month, as well as different hygiene products. And so Northern Illinois Food Bank does a wonderful job with the non-perishable stuff, but some of the other things that we need to get, some of them we're even still getting retail because that's as best as we've found for some of the hygiene products, as best as we found pricing. And we know that that's incredibly important for our clients. It's just very difficult to be able to find cheaper avenues with that. But the other thing about the budget that probably any business owner or anything knows about is the random stuff of running a business, right? It's like we have a van that we drive to some of the local stores that donate some food to us and things. We need insurance for that. We have utility costs. There's a lot of refrigeration, of course, that goes into refrigerating our frozen meats that we give out, as well as the dairy and all that. And just a lot of the standard business expenses that you'll run into really adds up to that $150,000 mark a year.
Sure. Now that budget in and of itself is propelled by any number of kinds of fundraising. I mean, annual fund, direct mail, and just people who have known about you for decades and just are regular supporters. But as I mentioned before we went to break, I know you have a significant and I believe brand new fundraising event coming up on Wednesday, November 6th.
Exactly right.
At the Elmhurst Art Museum.
Yes, sir.
And I and the viewers would like to hear a little bit more about that.
Sure. I would love to tell you a little bit more about that. Yeah, so this year we had decided to try to put a gala together to try to get more of a fundraising activity for the food pantry. So the name of the event is Art Beats, and it's going to be at the Elmhurst Art Museum, like you'd said, November 6th from 6:30 till about 10. I can go into more details about I will.
Absolutely.
So the event itself is going to be just a wonderful event. The entire museum is open to everyone, so you can, of course, go see the different exhibits that they have. We have the Elmhurst Jazz Combo that's going to be, Elmhurst College Jazz Combo that's going to be coming in to play for us, as well as we're going to be having a live painting that's going to be happening at the same time of the jazz performance. So it's literally going to be somebody setting up a canvas and making a painting from blank, somewhat choreographed to the music. So
Seriously.
Oh yeah,
Seriously.
seriously. We are very excited.
I have to admit that's intriguing.
Yeah. And then one of the other things that we think is going to be pretty cool and that is maybe a bit unique from some of the other galas that I've certainly been to in the past is that we have, to kind of continue going along with the art theme, is that all of our silent auction items that are going to be there are actually local artists who have donated their art. So some of them, of course, are paintings, some of them will be pictures, some sculptures. There's talks of glass blowing classes or different glass blowing or glass blown pieces of art. Yeah, we're very much looking forward to that because we get to showcase some local artists in here as well as hopefully be able to raise some good funds for the organization.
Well, it's interesting because you tap into several things, including the whole artist scene in Elmhurst where, if it isn't your thing, you're not aware of it.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But it very definitely exists and has
sure.
existed for decades.
Yeah.
So that will be interesting for your guests. You were going to say something.
I was just going to say that during the evening, we will also have testimonials from clients so that people can hear the story from the other side and the difference that it's made in their lives.
And of course, both of you would know this as well as I do. That's such a powerful thing because, first of all, they're true stories and they're local stories, but also because of the confidentiality of clients and people coming to you in need, sometimes maybe for the first time in their lives, coming up short. Not everybody wants to put that spotlight on that.
Right.
So when someone is willing to do it, that becomes a pretty powerful circumstance.
Not even just willing. Some of the people that are reached out to us to be able to be willing to give those have been saying, please let us help if we can, right? Because it's meant so much to them that it wasn't like, hey, could you please do this for us? They were like, please, can we tell our story if there's any way that we can help with the food pantry?
So how will people be invited, or how can people come to your event?
Sure.
That's those who are on our mailing list as regular or even irregular donors will get a save the date invitation. Others can simply go to our website once ticket sales are up and find all the information they need there. That's eyfp.org.
Cost?
is going to be $100.
I wasn't referring to you.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'll answer it too if you want. The cost for the evening will be $100 for each ticket, which is going to include food as well as beverages, drinks, and beer and wine and things of that nature.
Okay. So I want to circle away from the fundraiser for just a minute. We'll come back for a reiteration, but the whole process of the Elmhurst Yorkfield Food Pantry is essentially volunteer driven. How big is the board? How long have the two of you been on the board? And this would be individually answered. Why? You know, what caused you?
Sure.
There are countless not-for-profit boards, and many of them are robust. Some of them struggle.
Sure.
But you know, you made choices to be volunteers and be involved with the food pantry. So I'm interested in all that,
Sure.
all that
Please
information.
start,
want me to
Nancy.
start
Of course. You started before me, so
If you can
go right
remember what I asked,
I
just now,
can.
you can answer.
I started 2 days after I retired in 2011, June.
Okay.
It was a committee at that point. It wasn't a board because we were not a 501c3 yet. And the associate pastor of our church asked if I would be the treasurer because that woman was relocating. I said, sure, I can balance a checkbook, no big deal. Well, it wasn't a big deal at that point. And then we got into the capital campaign.
Sure. Yeah.
And I've stayed on the board since. I stepped down as treasurer to allow an individual who's a controller of a company and far more interested in that kind of thing than I. And I'm now the community outreach chair for the pantry. But I think it was just, I was called to do it and I had time.
For myself, it was actually a kind of fun story that I had not, at least my origin wasn't what I thought it would have been, or it wasn't, I want to say this, I wasn't expecting it to go the way that it had, and I'll elaborate a little bit more on that. So back when the capital campaign had started, so I'm actually the chairman of the chamber for this year, but I've been active with the chamber for a while. And the Elmhurst Yorkfield Food Pantry was trying to raise money for the capital campaign, and so they wanted to do a membership breakfast to just raise awareness. And of course, being a food pantry that's limited on funds, they wanted to host the space, but wanted somebody that could help fund for the food for the Chamber of Commerce breakfast. So I was like, sure, I'd love to do that. And so I just sponsored it. I didn't have much connection to the food pantry at the time, but I just wanted to help.
And that was the first time I met him, going to his office to ask for money.
Not the last. No, of course. But more of my involvement. So last year, it's funny, I kind of wanted to do a little bit more volunteering that was a bit more hands-on. I've been part of a number of different boards in the community and things of that nature, but I really wanted to actually start feeling like I was doing volunteering rather than sitting behind a desk sometimes. And so I'd reached out to the food pantry again. I knew that they do great things. And I started driving the van generally on Wednesdays to the different jewels here in town, very generously offering us food for the pantry. And so again, that started off with me wanting to be a little bit more hands-on and not as much being on the board. Then of course, months later, I joined the board. So when you get passionate about it and you see the incredible things, and I mean this as sincerely as I possibly can, when you see the amazing work that pantry does, you just want to get behind it, like truly. And so I wanted to just do the volunteering of the driving the vans, but yeah, it quickly changed my thoughts on that.
So you mentioned the number of volunteers you already have. Mm-hmm. Are you still looking for more volunteers from, entry level right on up to the elite status that the two of you hold?
Well, I don't know.
But I mean, seriously, are you feeling really good about where you are with volunteerism? But can you always use more?
We would never turn a volunteer away. And it's real easy to find out what we need, again, by going to our website at www.eyfp.org, clicking on the How to Volunteer button. There is availability for working with clients when they're shopping, for heavy lifting when the Northern Illinois Food Bank truck comes and it's a big truck, twice a month, for helping with the 600 pounds of reclaimed food that we get from area grocery stores every year, unloading, stocking.
Well, and you know, we have many wonderful volunteers, but sometimes people move, sometimes they're not able to continue doing it as much as they once were because their situations change in their life. So even though we are eternally grateful for the amount of volunteers that we have currently, sometimes, you know, it ebbs and flows, and so we definitely need people that can continue to join if it speaks to them, which I think it will.
So, last question before we close. And in some respects, maybe an impossible question to answer with any great degree of clarity, but would you forecast that the food pantry will be more necessary in the next decade, to put a parameter on it, or I guess hopefully less? I mean, what, when you look at the future, when you put together your, if you will, strategic plan, what does it say about the years ahead?
I think in general what it says is we're a business that's not going out of business anytime soon. We would love to. We would love that our neighbors were all fed without having to come to a food pantry, but that's not been our experience. Even with the ups and downs of the economy since we opened, the need has increased, or at least stayed stable every year.
I mean, the big financial recession, of course, was in 2008, was when, I think 2011 and 2012 was when we started doing the capital campaign, because we noticed that we needed more space. You said we were serving about 200 or 300 families at the time? Mm-hmm. We're at 600 a month now, and the economy has gotten significantly better than that since at that time, right? So, yeah, we do not expect, however much we wish we were out of business, we don't expect that anytime soon.
Well, thank you for joining me.
Thank you.
And my hope would be twofold, that the program and going out into the community not only has increased awareness of the good work that you do, but maybe some folks can find their way to the Art Museum on November 6th. I know I will be doing that.
That will be great.
Well, we can't wait to have anybody that can
Kevin, Nancy, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Appreciate it greatly.
So this has been Elmhurst Our Community. We've been talking about the Elmhurst Yorkfield Food Pantry and their upcoming fundraiser on November 6th. All three of us will look forward to seeing you there. I'm Ken Bartels, and for my two guests, we'll see you again. Thanks for watching. The Community Bank of Elmhurst Business Zone has modern co-working space and a conference room free for our business customers. Visit the zone today at communityelmhurst.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.